Welcome in everyone to your weekly weather briefing for the week beginning February 8th, 2024. My name is Brett Albright, meteorologist with the National Weather Service office in Atlanta, Peachtree City, and I will be providing your outlook for the next 7 days. We'll jump right into a look at the hazards table in terms of what we're expecting beginning Friday through next Thursday. You'll notice right away that we've got a couple of days in there on yellow, Sunday and Monday. Those days you'll see down there in the weather highlights that we are expecting a decent amount of rain in the area, anywhere between 1 and 3 inches, with some isolated amounts up to 4 inches across parts of North Georgia. The rain itself will probably begin sometime on Friday in North Georgia and then spread gradually south and eastward, affecting eventually the entire state by the time we get to Sunday and Monday. Drier weather should return next Tuesday and then continue through the end of the week, and we're back to a level 1 status because of that. Before we jump into the details on the precipitation outlook, just wanted to take a quick look at the current drought status, as where we are in drought will add some context to the rainfall totals that we are expecting for the upcoming weekend. If you take a look at the image on the left, that's for November 21st, 2023. That's when the drought that is currently coming to an end peaked. As you can see in that, we had a few counties in northwest Georgia that were as high as D4, with a good portion of northern Georgia in D2 or above. Since then, we've had some decent rainfall, and that has brought us back down, including clearing all of the drought out of parts of central Georgia and pushing us back to just a few pockets of D1 across northwest Georgia. Here's a quick look at the 60-day precipitation, and this is really the period at which we've brought that drought mostly to an end across the state. As you can see, if you look here across parts of North Georgia, some areas have seen upwards of 10 to 15 inches of rain in the last 60 days, so that'd be about December or so. Other areas not quite as much, but still decent totals and enough to eliminate that drought, with 6 to 8 or 8 to 10 inches occurring across a good portion of central and eastern Georgia. As far as how those totals compared to average, if we take a look over here on the left for that 60-day period, we do have a good swath in here just across the south side of the Atlanta metro, where we're looking at 150 to 200% of normal. So pretty solid rainfall in there. Haven't quite seen our normal rainfall here across northwest Georgia, with some areas still running just under 100%, anywhere between about 75 and 90% of normal. So that's why we haven't quite eliminated the drought up in those areas. Areas down across central Georgia where the drought wasn't quite as strong, we've seen kind of a mix to right around average precipitation, and that's been enough to alleviate drought conditions down there. Alright, let's jump from what happened over the last 60 days to what we're expecting this weekend. And we can begin by taking a look at Saturday into Saturday night and what we're expecting in terms of the risk of excessive rainfall. If you take a look at it right now, we do see that far northwest Georgia, generally Dade, Walker, Catoosa County areas, are clipped by that slight risk or level 2 risk of excessive rainfall for Saturday and Saturday night, with a level 1 or marginal risk just gradually expanding into other parts of northern Georgia. As we move on into Sunday and Sunday night, which is the last day of the excessive rainfall outlook, we do see that there's a broad marginal risk for excessive rainfall across a good portion of central and northern Georgia. Now with that, let's see if we can add a little bit of context here in terms of, what are the odds of receiving 1 inch of rain in a 24-hour period. So we'll start off by looking at Friday through Friday night and Saturday through Saturday night. Then on the next slide, we'll go ahead and jump into Sunday and Monday periods. So if we take a look at Friday, we can see that the real risk here for more significant rainfall totals in a 24-hour period, so amounts over an inch, remains focused over portions of Tennessee and Kentucky. As we go into Saturday, a frontal boundary sags this way and a trough approaches from the west. That gives us a little bit better forcing, as well as pulling in some better moisture off the Gulf to increase our risks across North Georgia specifically. And we do see that some areas in here, particularly right up here along the Tennessee-Georgia border, do creep upwards of 90% in terms of the risk of receiving greater than an inch of rain Saturday and Saturday night. Let's jump over into the second part of the weekend here and take a look at Sunday into Sunday night and Monday into Monday night. Same plots that we're looking at here, so we're still looking at 1 inch probs essentially in 24 hours. So you can see that right here across essentially the Atlanta metro, right along the I-20 corridor, we do have pretty good chances, anywhere between 80 and 90% of getting an inch of rain Sunday into Sunday night. And then as we expand to the rest of Georgia, those probabilities remain quite high, especially across the northern and central portions of the state, generally staying above 60% for the chances of 1 inch of rainfall. As we move into Monday and Monday nights, the storm starts to shift off to the east. With that, we're going to be seeing precipitation dissipating as we get into Monday night. It's also going to shift those probabilities for where we could see those higher rainfall totals towards, generally speaking, higher values across the eastern portion of the state, though the good portion of the state remains at or above 50% here in the light yellow for your chances of receiving more than an inch of rain Monday into Monday night. All right, so let's hop out of the probabilistic sphere and take a look here at what we are forecasting right now in terms of expected rainfall for the 4-day period beginning Friday and continuing through Tuesday morning. Now, these rain totals in here generally increasing as we go from south to north, looking from Columbus over towards Macon, down towards Dublin, Vidalia, looking at somewhere between about 1 inch and 2 inches of rainfall. Those totals creep up as we get towards Athens, Atlanta, Carlton, generally around 2 or 3 inches of rainfall in the forecast. And then as we move into North Georgia, most areas still fall in that 2 to 3 inch range, but we are expecting some isolated totals to creep up closer to 4 inches, especially across some of the higher terrain here in sort of north central Georgia. So we'll have to watch for that, see if that ultimately ends up leading to some minor flooding issues out there for us to consider here over the weekend. Now, as far as your hazards go from this rainfall, the main concern as we get into Sunday into Tuesday is going to be those more rapid rises along the river. So your smaller streams and stuff responding, particularly across the northern half of the state. And any of that flooding probably fairly isolated. As we move into the second part of next week and the runoff from this rain continues to push down our river basins, we may begin to see some rises along some of our more main stem and larger rivers out there, and that could end up leading to some rises in areas that didn't see as much rain. So down here across the central part of the state, as that water just sort of routes its way southward and towards the ocean. I haven't talked about it much in this presentation, and that's because right now the risk remains pretty low. But that is the potential for thunderstorms. We can't rule out an isolated rumble of thunder beginning on Friday across parts of North Georgia, but the real potential for thunder probably comes in as we get into Sunday night into Monday. As things currently stand, there's not a significant risk of severe weather. It doesn't mean that that won't develop over the weekend, but right now that risk remains low, largely due to some challenges out there in the environment in terms of getting enough instability for those thunderstorms. We will continue to monitor, though, and provide updates over the weekend as we move forward. All right, so let's switch gears here and we'll hop over to the temperature outlook, and then we'll take a look at what we're expecting for next week, moving out into that 7 to 14 day range, and just do kind of a quick glimpse at that. So as far as we're looking over the weekend, it's going to be fairly warm for us, so anywhere between 6 and 14 degrees above seasonal averages, with those values generally peaking for a lot of us on Saturday. That'll translate to quite a bit of 60-degree temperatures out there. So if you are anywhere I-20 northward, except for the higher elevations, you're looking at 60-degree highs pretty much through the weekend. We may see some 70s creep in, especially from like Macon, Columbus, southward, especially on Saturday. Those could creep just a touch further north, but overall quite warm. Now, unfortunately, with that warmth comes the rain, so we'll be warm and humid out there, but definitely not a cool weekend. Now, here's just a couple of quick graphs. Now, these are just for the Atlanta and Macon areas, but they do show how the overall trend goes for pretty much the entire region. You can see here at the start of these, if we look at just the Atlanta graph, here's your Friday through Monday period. Very little change between our highs and lows, and all of those values pretty much remaining well above averages, which would be down in the 50s, low 50s right now for highs. As we move into next week, we get into a clearer, fairer weather pattern that's going to allow us to cool off more at night and it's also going to push our high temperatures back closer to seasonal averages here. So we'll be right around average here in the low to mid 50s, depending on where you are across portions of north and central Georgia on Wednesday. One final slide here, and this is just a quick look at the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook coming from the Climate Prediction Center. If we jump over here and look at the temperature on the side, you do see that there's broad lean in the overall forecast towards cooler than average conditions across much of the southeast and eastern seaboard, and some of that does extend up through the plains as we move into the week for February 15th through the 21st, so mid-February-ish. Right now, those odds generally hovering somewhere between about 30 and 60%, depending on where you are here in Georgia. So they're decently in favor of those below average temperatures, but certainly not a guarantee. As we look at the precipitation outlook, this period does look like it'll feature a decent trough along the west coast, and that is where we're getting into these above average precipitation out there. Depending on what comes out of that and tries to creep into the southeast, we may see some shots at precipitation, particularly as we get towards next weekend here across the southeast. So we'll have to watch that, and with that, we're kind of sitting on the edge of being between just a slight lean towards below and a slight lean towards above. So overall, not a strong trend in either direction there. And that's all I have for you guys today. As always, feel free to reach out to us through any of the means listed here. We are on social media. We are available for our partners via chat. You can also give us a call anytime by phone if you have questions, or you can just check out our forecast online at weather.gov/Atlanta. Thanks again for joining, and have a good weekend, everyone.